Hi everyone. So today we are going to meet my very good friend from college. His name is Parthasarathi Pati, and he's a principal product manager at Eightfold.ai, which is a Silicon Valley-based startup. He's doing incredibly well as a product manager, and in the past he has founded his own company. Let's get our conversation with Parth started. Hey Parth, welcome to our channel. So let's start this discussion by telling our viewers about what you are doing currently at Eightfold.ai.
Thank you, Utsa, for inviting me to your channel. I hope it helps a lot of career aspirants with whatever they want to do. I'm a principal product manager at Eightfold.ai. Eightfold.ai is a Silicon Valley-based startup, and we match the right people to the right jobs using machine learning.
Thanks for that introduction, Parth. Taking you back to the college days, how did you start to think about your career back then? Did you want to become a product manager? Did you have that clarity since the start?
It's actually interesting, Utsav. I was cut out to do a PhD initially, but I felt that PhD is not my cup of tea 3 years into my program. Um, and me and a bunch of friends started up something very small in my college. And the entrepreneurship bug really hit me then. Felt as if I could make something useful for people, um, and they could derive value out of it. Um, and uh, Technology was the means to go about it. So back then, we had the first product management role being offered from our college by the Times group, the Times Internet group. And I joined the product leadership program there for a year and a half. The idea for me was to learn the art of product management and consequently start something of my own. So that is primarily what I wanted to do. A year and a half into my first job, I decided to take the plunge into entrepreneurship, and I started my own company focused on fitness first, and later we pivoted into chronic care, primarily on diabetes.
Yeah, very interesting. So, starting to think about doing a PhD, then sitting in placements, taking up a corporate job, and then finally deciding to take a plunge into doing your own startup. So, Parth, a lot of people these days in their colleges or in their, let's say, first jobs want to start up. Can you give them a flavor of the initial days of your startup? What was the idea and what was your approach towards solving that problem?
Um, Initially, the idea was to build a fitness network. We were trying to curate various gyms and healthy food joints. There weren't too many, frankly, back then. But the bet was that the aspiration for an Indian to focus on health and fitness would be on a growth curve. We quickly pivoted from that idea because we felt that there was not a lot of um, uh, value in the long term, and it was very hard to derive recurring value from such a market. Hence, we decided to pivot to chronic care, where the need is much more immediate. You want to seek remedies or solutions much more actively, as opposed to what you would do if you were seeking for, being more fit. Um, so we went and talked to a few different diabetologists and endocrinologists. For the uninitiated, these are kind of doctors who treat diabetes or any endocrine disorders, and got to understand that the biggest pain point was they do prescribe medications to their patients, but they also prescribe lifestyle advice. And lifestyle advice obviously tends to be limited, and it's not as personalized as uh, uh, it can be for an individual. um, the individual struggles to implement the lifestyle advice. So whether it is about healthy eating, or working out, or even doing continuous blood sugar monitoring, and changing the insulin dosages accordingly. All of these seem to be things that the patient needs to manage at home, but they did not have any kind of support during this entire process. So the idea was to create a digital diabetes program and deliver it via mobile app, and all the while relaying that data back to the doctor so that the doctor or physician is able to monitor exactly what the patient has been doing in between the two visits. So we started off by creating a care program and then digitized it in a mobile app. The doctor prescribed our app apart from the medication that he provided. The patient would download the app and start following the program. In addition, the patient would also opt for a coach who can be a dietitian or a diabetes educator who can guide the patient step by step through this entire lifestyle change process, including adjustments in insulin dosage. So this was a win-win for both the doctor as well as the patient. And as we found out in due course, it was a win for the ecosystem. Ecosystem in healthcare relates to pharma companies, insurance companies, even employers, because all of them have a stake in better health for the patient. So by and by, we were reached out by some of these stakeholders, and we started implementing these programs for these large players, and they then eventually became our payers. So that's pretty much the idea in a nutshell.
Nice. So, Parth, can you tell our viewers what were the challenges that you faced, especially doing a startup in the health tech space, and how did you go about solving those challenges?
Starting off with an idea or an insight, and then trying to build something around it, um, in hindsight, was pretty trivial for us. The major hindrances was thinking about the go-to market. How do you approach and acquire customers, and then do so in a repeatable basis? And once you start understanding the healthcare market, things start getting a little more challenging, which is why we don't see a lot of big healthcare companies out of India. Um, First of all, 80% of our healthcare sector is unorganized, meaning um, healthcare is being delivered by individual clinics. So one needs to be able to approach each of these clinics to actually cover the major market share, in the healthcare world. So to be able to approach these clinics again requires you to create a sales team and a GTM motion that requires you to go individually visit these clinics. That is a huge cost of acquisition. Um, that's one part of the problem. The second is who will pay for such a solution. If you think about the patient has already a lot of expenses in terms of medications, lab tests that they need to do on a recurring basis if they are diabetic or have any other conditions along with it. So in order to pay for an additional service, they need to shell out more out of pocket. And this is a unique challenge to India. It does not happen in Western countries because much of the population is covered by insurance. So natural next payer is an insurance company. So we approached insurance companies and they were very interested, but the pay margin there is also very limited, given how cost sensitive the Indian market is. So these are some of the challenges. One is you need to think through the GTM well in advance, and think whether there is a channel model fit as well. So whether the cost of acquisition um, makes sense given the pricing model that you have for your product. So it's not just important to solve for the market, also important to understand the channel. So I think that was the biggest challenge. Challenge number two is healthcare is a very regulated sector. So even if you start something and solve something in healthcare, one has to think about the regulations. Um, for example, in our case, we had to do a trial with our digital diabetes program. And you can imagine that as a startup, we had limited resources. So doing a trial, a clinical trial, which only large pharma companies can afford, is a huge hindrance. So we had to approach, few doctors, institutions, work with them to build out this clinical trial. Somehow, I think we were able to accomplish it, and our results were pretty good. But that is also something to think through. The product market fit in healthcare is not just product and market fit, but also policy and product fit.
Yeah. Entering the so-called Chakravyuh is what we discussed till now. Now let's talk about exiting it. So I know you decided to exit soon after, Parth. Can you walk us through how you took those decisions? When did you see that coming? And after that, how did you plan to enter back the corporate world?
We exited because of various reasons. There were certainly challenges, but these challenges were not an impossibility to overcome. As I said, we were able to do the clinical trial, and over time, we figured out GTM motion that makes sense for us. And we got other players into the market who were willing to pay us, be it pharma companies or insurance or even employers. And the eventual idea was to also expand to other markets outside of India, where we could charge more for our services. Um, we also had a strategic investor who was trying to build a healthcare ecosystem in India. And we partnered with them because they also had the know-how of taking products and launching them in the US market. They themselves had a billion dollar, close to $1 billion company in the US operational. The reason we exited was because we did not agree with certain terms of the investors, and their idea was to acquire us and launch us as a part of their solution, and we wanted to remain independent. But since they had a lot of stake in the company already, we had to make the decision of uh, you know um, getting acquired and then eventually exiting.
Right. So Parth, if you were to do it all again, what would you do differently? This would really benefit all those who are like wanting to do startup, especially early on in their careers. So can you tell our viewers, some of the learnings that you got from your entrepreneurship experience?
If I were to start up again, um, I will do these few things, right? One, I will join a job, right? And make sure that I have a steady income, and then build something on the side as a side project and test the waters there, right? Now, here, one has to not just test whether the product works with a given set of users, but also how will you acquire the users continuously and how much you're going to charge them. So the general idea is to always test product market fit, but it's best to test the product market, then the product channel, and the channel model fit. So test all the fits before you take the plunge. An easiest way to think through this problem is always try and build for a community of users. So one community, for example, right? And you know the example of Facebook. Facebook started with a natural community, the, which is Harvard, right? So it started with one college, and then once it succeeded in Harvard, it moved to other natural communities, which are other colleges. So if you can think about a problem where there is a natural community already existing, let's say high school, right? Like how Snapchat started, then you are more likely to succeed versus otherwise, as then you will always need to spend more to acquire users. And if your product succeeds in one community, it's very likely that will succeed in another community. If it fails in one community, it's very likely that will fail in another community. So always focus on building for a community of users if you're starting up for the first time. Second, your idea does not have a lot of value versus the ability to test recurringly. So create hypotheses which are easily testable with your community of users and move really fast. That's the second advice. A third advice is minimize risk. Um, we have some sort of a fantasy with risk, and as soon as we get out of college, we think about quitting our jobs and starting a startup. But I would recommend that you have you try and get into a job and create a product, test the market out, see if you are really passionate about that sector, and only then make the full plunge. Fourth is being able to find the right team. It's probably the hardest part. Find people who are equally passionate to work with you, not just on on a specific idea, but to just be with you and spend time with you, and be a true partner. Um, that is that is a little difficult. It's easier said than done. And fifth is choose the problem wisely. Um, do not focus on, now I might get flack for this, do not focus on the very hard problems, right? Um, there are two ways to think about problems. Either you can fish in shallow waters where there'll be a lot of fish, but maybe the fishes are small, or you can go to the deep water to catch a very large fish, right? But to go into deep water, you need a ship, and to go to shallow waters, you need a boat, right? So always build a boat first. It's fine if there are lots of boats and lots of small fish to catch, right? But if that will get you started, right? Even if you look at Elon Musk's journey, Elon Musk did not start out by building out SpaceX or Tesla. He started out by building a payments company called PayPal, right? And then he used the money that he made out of that company to build the Tesla and SpaceX. So choose a problem, that that is not huge, right? Always start with a small problem and solve it really well. So that way you can taste some early success, and tasting success early is very important because that gives you the confidence to pursue bigger problems.
Well, those were some brilliant pieces of advice, Parth, and I'm sure a lot of our viewers would benefit from those words of wisdom. So next week, we continue this conversation with Parth, and we understand from him what it takes to build a successful career in product management. So see you guys next week.